Good evening, Chanukah Sameach. Welcome to another exciting adventure in personal prayer. And we're here at 7th night of Chanukah, Baruch Hashem, the lights of Chanukah upon us. And I bless us. I pray that Hashem should give us the ability to learn and take whatever we're learning deeply and be able to apply it in our lives and come closer to a deeper, more true relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Harina kasher tzmi b'limud Hishtapchut HaNefesh l'kol tzadikim ha'ametim sheberoin and kol tzadikim ha'ametim she'ochnei afar Doshim Asher B'Tzeim Afar Lebeinu Kadosh Tzadik Sula Nachman V'Kol Chochma Ben Nachman Fegen Nachman Human Zchut Hamigin Kol Yisrael Amen. And this may be in the merit of this learning that there should be healing for Chaya Bat Bea and anybody else that you want to mention now that they should have healing, and that the prisoners that are please Hashem please free Ephraim Yisrael Ben Asnat and Jonathan Pollard and Shalom Rabashkin and all anybody else who's imprisoned, whether in physical prisons or emotional or spiritual prisons. Please free us, Hashem, to serve you. Okay, so we're actually on Torah Ayin Aleph, and I hadn't really decided whether to just skip over Ayin Aleph because it's pretty heavy for Hanukkah. It's a lot. It's pretty intense. Anybody? So I thought I'd leave it up to the people who are learning together. I could go either way with it. You want to just learn in order, Ayin Aleph, or should we just let the heavy stuff slide until after Hanukkah?
Can you just tell us what's heavy about it?
It's all about Tikkun and Bris, which is always a heavy subject.
Nice, good.
Okay, I'm for that. Tikkun and Bris. I mean, Hanukkah, every holiday, everything in the world really is about Tikkun and Bris. So. And that's what I learned from Rabbi Nachman. He showed me how everything really is Tikkun Bris, and everything is pagama. Everything that we do that loses. Understand that even the slightest, technically, even on the level of absolute truth, the slightest loss of my awareness that it's all Hashem in the moment is technically also pagama Bris. So, and remember that. So when we hear those ideas, I know that. Before I came to a different way of looking at the world through Rabbi Nachman's teachings, that I used to get that I feel like an inner what hope, a loss of hope, despair from that. Well, if that's the case, what hope do I ever have to be able to be any good? Then what I basically derived from Rabbi Nachman and understood is no. Understand, yes, there is that aspect of you have to use that shame and that loss of hope to plead with Hashem and do tshuva and work hard and strive to be the most righteous, pious person that you can be. But really, on the other hand, come on, who can do that? So how do I relate to that? Because I have to understand that Hashem's main creation in over 6,000 years is the creation of darkness, the creation of constriction. Why? Because He wants us to appreciate, to be able to receive and appreciate infinite, eternal good. And we cannot possibly appreciate good of any type unless we experience its opposite. So Hashem created this crazy world and spent 6,000 years slowly but surely unfolding the darkness of constricted consciousness until we live in a time when it's so amazingly dark, and now He's funny because now He starts to slip the light back in, so that common people can start to understand this. Right? So when you understand that, then you understand that He made Shmiras Bris, and especially in our time. See, Am Yisrael for generations was really good with Shmiras Bris for the most part, from what I gather. It seems likely to say because it was just people. Am Yisrael was much stronger, and in our time, there's been such a loss of that. So on the one hand, we could say, "Oh, we're all guilty." Yes, but we're not looking at that so much because an hour a day I can break my heart and be guilty. But the rest of the time I'm besimcha. And the rest of the time I'm saying, Ribbon Shalom, you created it this way that I would be part of your creation of the unfolding of darkness by falling into that place. I get to raise up the holy sparks that are there. That's why Rabbi Nachman came into the world 200 years ago and said, hey, here, you're going to need this. And he gave Tikkun Klali. Right? And so all this stuff about Tikkun Bris, we have to understand within that context, so that we never have despair about it, never feel overwhelmed, even if, God forbid, something keeps happening. And I know that that in my own battle and working in this area, and when I saw slow, like times I'd have really strong changes and improvement in my relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, like being able to keep my eyes off women and things like that. And other times I was looking at women, and Baruch Hashem. So that was, and I've watched clearly that there's a cycle involved. Like it gets stronger, then fall, and gets stronger, and fall. Okay, that's all it always is. So let's go on. Ayin Aleph. Kol Echad. You're just in time. We're just marmah starting Ayin Aleph. Can you bring a chair?
We'd like to be joined.
I could. Join us.
Nice. Great.
Nice. Hanukkah Sameach, Chodesh Tov.
How is it rude?
Oh, it's beautiful.
I don't see that where you are. I thought I was there. So where did you just spend it?
Around.
Oh wow.
Nice, man.
How much you have?
This Ayin Aleph.
Okay. Wow. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Here, hand me this chair. Is it over there next to Moshe? That way you can move you tonight. So now I'm taking it off.
He nudges me enough during the day sometimes.
Okay. Just in time, we had a nice introduction about a major part of the subject of Ayin Aleph. Okay, so here we go. Kol echad, kfi tikun bris, kfi kashrus so letzadikei emes, shem shomer bris. Each and every one, according to his own level of rectification of the covenant of sexual purity, u'kfi hitkashrutot letzadikei emes, and according to the level of connection he has to true tzadikim, shem shomer bris, that they are the ones who are the epitome guardians of the covenant. According to that level, he'll taste the sweetness in his words of prayer. And then a lion comes to eat his korban. That a lion will eat. This is brought in Tikkunei Azor, that when the korban is when the sacrificial offering is accepted, that the spiritual aspect of the lion comes and consumes that korban. Hainu tfilato. In this case, the korban, the offering, is your prayer. Aval al yedei pegam bris hu b'chinas mayim meririn. But God forbid, through damaging the bris, which is the aspect of bitter waters, ve'az eno yachol litom nesikus b'dibur tefillah. Then he actually can't taste that sweetness in his words of prayer. Ve'az kalba nachis lechol korbano. Hainu tfilaso. Then a spiritual entity of a dog comes and consumes his korban, his offering, which is his prayer. And you should know that the haughty-faced people, the people with unholy chutzpah that are in the generation, hem klavim. These are the spiritual dogs. Ha'omdim v'cholkim al tfilaso shel ish ha'Yisraeli. They stand and they make fun of somebody who prays hard. They stand around instead of recognizing the sanctity of something going on. They walk in front of you, the person praying. There's a lack of sensitivity to sanctity of prayer, and so because why? Because they're azepanim. They're full of themselves. They're full of their own importance and smartness and whatever else, right? And so they don't have awareness of Hashem. They're like a dog that doesn't pay attention. You throw a dog the meat, it goes and eats the meat. Whereas a lion is very selective, right? I mean, don't bother me. When I'm ready, I'll go hunt. The dog, he's sleeping and you throw down a piece of meat, he's up. The lion if he's not hungry, he doesn't care about it. So they're standing and they're coming against the person's prayer to the Jewish person. And that who's that person that they're coming against? Is the person that's trying to do his best, but he hasn't rectified the covenant yet completely. Right? So he's a good guy, he's trying to do his best, he prays, and he arouses this spiritual disharmony. And he also, Rabbi Nachman says in Likutei Etzes, in the section on prayer, tavin kama gadol avonam shel hacholkim al tfilas isha Yisraeli ve'rotzim levalbel es tfilaso. And from this you can understand how great is the sin of those who actually do anything to interfere with a Jewish person's prayer. I shouldn't say Jewish, really. Israeli's prayer, because Jewish is part of Israeli. Jewish is just Shevet Yehuda, one small part of Am Yisrael. So anyway, to interfere with the prayer of a Israeli or a Ben Israelite, and they want to confuse his prayer. Because even that person that's praying has not completely rectified the covenant. And for this reason, he's drawing upon him that disharmony, his own spiritual connection. Because that's what that happens when there's any type of pagam bris. What's happening is the other side forces are getting fed. They're causing an interference. It's causing a disharmony, and so there's a disharmony in his own spiritual connection. So therefore, he draws also disharmony in that way about his prayer.
Is it that he draws disharmony, or is that the shafa is going out and nurturing the disharmony that he already created by being impure by pagam bris, and that interferes?
That sounds also good.
Okay.
Which do you think could be more? It doesn't really matter, but I mean, are they the same? Aren't they very similar in that way, though? Because when we're saying the disharmony that's drawing them, it's drawing them because they're nourishing. That's why it's drawing them.
Yeah.
Because they're nourishing from that.
Yeah.
Seems.
Yeah.
Who knows? Alavai should know something. Right. And then I should know that I don't know anything, no matter what I know. So. Okay, so when they haven't fully rectified the bris, and they draw this, or something is associated with this disharmony. Which is the aspect of the dog that comes down and eats it. But those who are causing this, just because the Jew deserved it, the Israeli man, the Israelite that was not fully in a proper place of praying, so that his prayer went directly to its proper root, but rather, so he draws this upon himself because of his actions from the Pagam. Nevertheless, that still doesn't excuse these azepanim, these people that come against and interrupt his prayer. Because they're actually uprooting their own souls from holiness. And they actually cause themselves to literally be called dogs, God forbid. And this aspect of the dogs are the chutzpahdik ones. Because they interfere in his prayer. Now, I don't know exactly if anybody has any ideas what maybe we would be probably good to hear from Chaim David tonight, but he's not with us at this time. It should be healthy. But exactly what it means when it says cholkim v'tfilaso. Because does it mean that he's literally coming up, like I was giving examples what I thought, maybe possibly that going across, walking in front of somebody's cholkim v'tfilaso, maybe making fun of the person who's trying to pray hard, or I actually experienced some interesting stuff. There was a period of time when I was first really into Rabbi Nachman. But so what I'm about to say is not I had a really good time with strong prayer where I was mamish like flying. And I think anybody who's come close to Rabbi Nachman there's this idea that when you're coming close to tshuva, you get lifted up to kind of be shown what it's like, and then you get thrown back down to say, okay, now yearn for it and work for it and try to come back to that. So I was in this place of really davening in Gevalt. I'd be sitting there an hour in the Shemona Esrei, crying ridiculously. It was a wonderful period of time. I loved it. I pray I should come back to it. And people would actually bump into me on purpose to make sure that I was being real. Or that's right. something like that. I could feel that. I don't know if that's exactly the case, but I felt people on purpose come out of their way. I remember that the Baruch Hashem was in such a good place that I don't know for sure what was happening, but I remember times when people seemed to be coming over and trying to distract me and things like that. So I'm a perfect example of this, because this was just when I was coming back to learning to follow Rabbi Nachman. I was just starting to work on Pagama Bris, just on Tikkun Bris. Tikkun Bris. And so this is, I think, very similar to what he might be talking about, because as I'm saying, I say, well, that's exactly what he's talking about. I was praying really well. I was really enjoying the prayer and tasting the sweetness of it, and that was happening. So I don't know, maybe that's what it is.
I have the experience that if I'm not at peace with things, knowing that, more like knowing and judging myself well, and being not obstacles myself and other people, and being in a good space, then that's when people will could come and bump into me. And it's like almost like a draw on myself, because I haven't passed that stage yet. Like I'll be driving and feeling like paper for show, I'm there. I'm like flying, I'm going. And I'm like, oh no, I hope someone doesn't bump into me, And I can go either way. I can go, you know what, Baruch Hashem, get everything taken care of. They'll do exactly what needs to be done. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I'm not going to flinch, whatever. That's their choice, and I'm dying, and nothing will happen. But if I'm like, oh no, and I just start getting wound up about it, then they're going to come and bump into me.
Yeah, I've seen similar types of things, and when I hit the place, that's right. Especially, I've been really trying to work hard to get to that place, and I hit that place of that connection, of that feeling of awareness of Hashem's presence, and boom, that's when the klipa happens. It's cool. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah.
בסדר. כי בוודאי אדם צריך להגיע עצמו, להתפלל בכל כוחו, אף על פי שהוא כמו שהוא. So a person, you have to know that we're talking about actually our experiences where we actually hit this place, but he's talking about also, and specifically he started talking about somebody who doesn't taste the sweetness of the prayer. And he's explaining that also that comes from the lack of tikkun bris. That he says a person, again, I'm going to go back. I'm going to want to clarify what I said, because I think it sounds like I was saying two opposite things now that I'm hearing it more. And that what I'm saying is, before, when I began, I got lifted up. After that, I was dropped down, and the inability to taste the sweetness in my prayer after that's what we're talking about. That's from a lack of shlemus of tikkun bris. Right? So I'm in the process over a long time. It takes a while. We grew up in this crazy world, and anybody who had any type of experience with Pagama Bris knows what I'm talking about, that it's a very deep hole. And we'd love to come out of it right away. And in many ways we do, but there's still ways that, like, I've noticed a cycle since I've been working on this particular process, that it comes like a cycle of, all of a sudden, I'm like for a while, I don't want to look at, like I mentioned, for a while I don't even want to look at women, right? And then suddenly I find myself, wait a minute, why am I like, oh, look at that one, That's the type of thing that I've noticed that comes in a cycle, and now my main battle will be Shmirat Einayim, for instance, or maybe my main battle on a more advanced level is Shmirat HaMachshava, whereas before it was, like the Shem Yirachem, looking at things I shouldn't have been looking at. Right? So each time it comes back, I've noticed that there's a more refined level of the tikkun.
Yeah, but how does it work these days when, like, I hear what you're saying, but I sense the same thing, that I would say to myself, all right, the next 3 girls that come around that look provocative, I'll look the other way. And that happened. I managed to do that. I sort of trained myself to not. I saw somebody who I thought was provocative, and I looked the other way. And then, say, the following day, or even today, for example, I saw myself, because we're in Israel with full of Jewish people. I say to myself, well, I'll look at the face, look at people's faces,
right?
So it's it seems to, for me, it seems to be a very hard test.
Well, of course
You
it
know,
is. That's the point.
You know, because, I mean, I'm
You
not
do
sure how you're supposed to do it.
the best you
sometimes.
can. That's all.
The best you can.
With knowing that we're here. Again, we're here to fail. We're here to experience constriction, failure, and loss. But Hashem's Rachaman, so He gives us plenty of chances to not fail. But that's part of the human experience too. Hashem also wants us to experience victory. What an amazing creation, the experience of victory. If I was created in the world, I don't know if I would have created the human experience of victory and achievement. Wow. But also the human experience of failure. How can I appreciate the experience of victory unless I've had the experience of failure? What an amazing creation.
So how do you sort of fight that? What is an animalistic?
It's all through prayer. That's the main
prayer.
point, especially in our time. That's what Rabbi Nachman's telling us. See, it used to be. That's what I alluded to earlier. It used to be that Am Yisrael was strong enough, for the most part, to be able to decide on willpower alone. And also the world, it wasn't so blatant in the world.
Right.
It wasn't such a ribui or so much light. By the way, the naked body is not bad. It's too much light, and that's what caused. Too much light is also evil because too much light feeds the forces of evil.
Too much chesed.
Right, too much chesed. Yeah, that's it. Because every good feeling that we have from anything is always rooted in place of chesed and love, right? And it's called fallen chesed, fallen love, when you love something, when you're attached to or have a physical urge for something, food, sex, etc. Those are all called fallen loves. And they're rooted in the place of true love, true chesed.
Or chesed that was corrupted. Maybe.
But again, that's the beauty of this. If you step back and look at Hashem's creating of this difficult challenge called Shmiras Habris, and look at it from the perspective of, wait a minute, how can you? I thought you're a good God. Why are you giving us such a hard time? Right? And then you go back and you say, wait a minute, I get it. You created this so I could experience that difficulty, so I'd be able to appreciate eternal relaxation and eternal perfection. I have to go through imperfection, and Hashem hid it for 6,000 years that's what He was doing in the most brilliant way. It's just now that we're starting to wake up to these ideas.
What? Just now? What?
In our time,
It's
not. The common people didn't understand this 100 years ago. 200 years ago, it wasn't.
More than 120, 30, 50 years
even
ago.
50 years ago.
50 years ago, dressed more modestly, didn't they?
Yeah, people dressed more modestly.
women
So Hashem, so from the place again, I always like to step back and say, what is Hashem orchestrating that He caused that people are dressed immodestly and women are going around without clothes? Because yes, again, free choice, we always have to say, free choice, it's the people's fault. But two things exist simultaneously. Free choice with divine providence, both are true. We can't intellectually understand. So free choice is that people should be dressing more modestly, but divine providence side is, why does God put it into people's heads to dress less modestly? Because, and I don't know what else makes sense, but what I've derived from Rabbi Nachman's teachings, that it seems that that's what Hashem is doing. He's unfolding this creation of darkness so that we have a participation with Hashem in raising up the holy sparks that are in those disgusting places by falling and then doing tshuva.
So every time, like, if you're walking in the street and you're thinking, like, oh, the next three beautiful women. Well, let me see which one's beautiful. That's one maybe. I don't know.
All I have to do is scream to Hashem, Hashem, please, this pleasure. All you have to do is learn you have to get used to this. Rabbi Nachman says we have to get used to praying because we're not used to it.
So that's what you're saying, prayer is
you got to get used to praying. So when you feel that way, you turn to Hashem and you say, Hashem, please, all this desires I have for sex and everything like that, I want that to be my desire for you and your holiness, because you're the one who created this desire.
Amen.
So let me turn it to you and let me remember, because I'm the Meshuggah here, Hashem. The only reason I forget is because you take it away, as we say in the second bracha of Shemona Esrei, Melech me mitu mechayeh. He's the king who decides whether he's turning off on and off the light switch. Melech me mit, he turned off your awareness. He killed you off. Melech mechayeh turned on. Oh, it's you, God. Wow, that's awesome. Right?
The other part I wanted to say to that joke, with emotionally, and the other part I wanted to say is that every time you even have a thought of, wow, well, maybe I should look away, this is something that I should look away from or not pay attention because Hashem, like Moshe was saying, Hashem is really the main place where we show our love, or our wives to be. And those are the proper places where we show the true love, not the fallen love.
Right.
So every time we have the thought of turning away and turning towards the good love, then that in itself helps release those sparks and raise the sparks.
Yes. The question on the floor is, well, there's actually a couple of things we're going to address. What one should do when one sees a beautiful woman, where should they put their focus? And what if seeing that beautiful woman actually raises the person out of the level of physicality into transcendence, into the appreciation of divine beauty?
That's what I was trying to say.
All right? And Laid was about to address this.
Was it?
I address part of it, if it's okay.
This is a chabur. This is not my show. I just happen to be like.
Okay. So there's a Gemara in Maseches Chulin, and Chulin deals with animals and kashrus and anatomy and physiology of animals and what's kosher and everything. And one of the things it says that everything that Hashem created in the world that's mutar, that's asur bahana is also mutar bahana, which is forbidden for to have pleasure out of it, is also permitted to have pleasure.
That there's something similar that you could find that's much
Exactly. And what's the difference between the two is time and place. And it goes on to list a bunch of things. Like it says, if you want to have the taste of chazer, you can have the pleasure of chazer, and this is how you do it. And it describes this certain brain of a fish, I think. Is it a fish? It's in the sea, and you cook it a certain way, and it tastes like chazer. And it describes you want to have milk and meat. Is you say, you take the tit of a cow and you kosher it, and since that was holding the milk, the flesh itself is actually meat. You can kosher it in a way, and you can have the cheeseburger taste in a kosher way. So it goes through all these different examples. So the difference is time and place. Is this the right time and the right place to have this pleasure, or is there another time and another place?
Right, and the considerations about whether it is or not is also is whether which part of the avodat Hashem you're working on. So the avodat Hashem has multi levels, and everybody can find whatever they want within it. So there's a level of avodat Hashem that goes, I'm enjoying my pleasures according to halacha, and I'm serving Hashem. Then there's maybe a little bit more refined. I'm enjoying my pleasures according to halacha, and I'm conscious of my gratitude to Hashem. Okay, then maybe there's another level that I'm aware of the pleasures and choosing to not avail of them because I'm working on developing greater depth of emunah, like the tzaddikim, that all the pleasures of this world really are nothing, and that I'm absolutely going to get this feeling of need I have for this pleasure, that I have total trust that I'm going to get more than my needs met forever and ever. And that the main thing that I'm here for is to learn how to have the experience, to go through to have the experience of resisting. So that doesn't mean what does resisting mean? Like, we're supposed to have pleasures when on Shabbos, Sudas Mitzvahs. Hashem give us plenty of frameworks. Marriage to have intimacy. Gain your someone for all of us who need our marriage partners. B'karov. So that's Hashem gave us, like Leib was saying, the time and the distinction, the framework, and where we are in our avodah. Because there are people, like the Gemara says, that there some people on a certain level of advancement, and the Gemara always couches these terms in occupations. Like if you're a merchant, or if then your time frequency for intimacy would be once a month. But so the Hasidic understanding of that would be that if you're a merchant, meaning that you're a person who's so deeply selling the idea of the emunah schor, which is the merchant, is schor, which is the emunah, the makifim, that you have much less need for sex, and your wife is with you on that. But it goes according to the woman's needs. but also the man's level. If a woman has needs, but he's a tzaddik, then the Gemara says his time of sexual relationship is Shabbos to Shabbos. But then there's somebody else whose time is several times a week. The Gemara says it depends on who you are, what you're doing, and what's your purpose. What's your tachlis of what's the nature of your soul and your tikkun in the world? How do you know what it is? You ask. You ask Hashem, please show me how I'm supposed to do in order to live according to your ratzon and truth. Fill my heart with true, good, holy advice.
Thus, you just answered my question because it's obviously living in Israel, living in Jerusalem, where you're amongst Jewish people. You're obviously going to be meeting different.
Right. So he said, where should you put your ask him to save you from tests.
Save you from tests.
And then observe, and then always be grateful when he did. Notice that you didn't have tests, and then afterwards, wow, thank you so much, and really feel touched how much he answered your prayer. And then say, can I have that again, please? That was good. Right? And that's how this works. We again, like Rabbi Nachman says, we have to get used to praying. Yeah. We have to get used to looking to Hashem. That Rabbi Nachman castigated Rav Nassim for not praying for a new button.
Right.
Rabbi Nassim said, Ad kadei, even until that, Rabbi Nachman said, what is it, beneath your dignity to pray to a God for your button?
So when you're saying praying, it's not just praying in a communion.
It's recognizing a lack in the moment, and instead of just going automatically to fill that lack like an animal, rather take the extra moment to have a human consciousness, being a true Adam, of being conscious of Hashem's presence, that He's the one who's giving everything, even though, according to my five senses, it seems like I went to the tailor and bought a button and had to put it on. And it's a beautiful, wonderful process to develop getting used to praying. I'm not there. I'm working on it. I grew up in America, I grew up in an Anglo place, we're not used to praying. Go and pray once a week in church. We're not used to except for, there are some righteous goyim that are constantly praying though. There are some righteous goyim that constantly, I've known a few of them, they're amazing. But as far as and then the Jews copied the goyim and said, oh, we only pray once a week in our synagogue? Oh, okay.
Otherwise, the Jews in the Bible Belt would be the front Jews around.
No, you don't. Yeah.
So he says, so a person obviously has to try as hard as he can, even if he doesn't feel it, to say the words of prayer. And he says, "V'gam hayageh ba'atzma yikara me'od." That effort. So, like what we're talking, let's just to bring it back to this subject as well, because it's really the same thing. The effort that you took to turn your head away from one girl that you didn't normally think about doing is so precious. The effort that a person does, that an Ish Yisraeli does, to try to say a couple of words. The effort that the person makes to turn away from whatever he's doing and stand in Shemona Esrei. Whether he made it to the minyan, whether he didn't make it to the minyan, hopefully he made it to the minyan. What if he didn't and he's standing there Shemona Esrei and his Yetzirah is pounding him and saying, you didn't go to the minyan? No, that's extremely precious that he turned away from what he was doing and prayed Shemona Esrei. What if he didn't say it? What if he just said the words and raced through? Okay, is it better if we have real kavanah, well, that's what he's saying. That's what we want, to taste the sweetness of the prayer. The tasting the sweetness of the prayer is you are in an intimate relationship with the Shekhinah. That's sweet. Okay, what if not? Say the words. Race through, fine. Whatever level of a little extra refinement, that's also more precious. But the fact that we did even a little bit, even that you wanted to, you said in other places, Rabbi Nachman says, maybe you didn't do it. What if it was time to pray and you didn't pray? But your heart nudged you and you went, oi. He says, that is so precious to Hashem, you have no idea. Does it give us excuse not to do it? No. It just says if that a person has fallen to that level where they're not getting it together, don't despair. Even that's good. Whatever little bit is good, and through that good points of being aware, you'll open up again and get strength and come back to more and more proper service according to halacha. Yofi, Hashem. Because when Ayin Aleph, right where it's the end of the paragraph, where it says, where's the parentheses? It's actually the second end of the second paragraph. Brackets, not parentheses. Because it says in Tehillim, right? Ki alecha horagnu kol hayom. Because of you, we killed ourselves all day long. We kill ourselves for you, God. You know, I don't want to get up and pray, but I'm going to do it. That's explained in a different place in Likutei Moran in Tinyana Memvav. V'hine od muvan mitvav zichron v'racha, and we can understand further from Rabbi Nachman's words in Likutei Moran, the second Torah Bet. Asher kol hapogim b'bris notlin mimeno hatfila al yadei hisgabrus machshavos zaros. He says anyone who damages the bris has the power of prayer taken away from them through the increased incidence of strange thoughts. In other words, you're trying to pray. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. I hope I'm the only one. That I'm sitting there in Shemona Esrei, and all of a sudden my thoughts are on something like have nothing to do with prayer. That's Machshavot Zarot. And they're spiritual entities. They come in. A thought comes in. A thought doesn't. That's why the people who are researching all this will never find the place in the brain where thought originates, because a thought doesn't originate in the brain. It's received in the spiritual channels and transmitted to awareness. Right? So that's those strange thoughts come in. Shabayim levalbel tfilaso. V'chen kasav sham b'simen lam. And he also says in another place in Torah 30, Asher kol bilbulim shemei olam v'kol ashtusim v'kol yirbuv das sheyesh la'adam b'chol hayom be'ez sheyeh. He says all the different things that confuse a person, that are in the world, that distract us, and all the foolishness that we get tied down and worry about so many times, and all the different mixing ups of different ideas and opinions that a person has each and every day, and whatever time he gets different. We all go through these different types of things whatever time they come upon us. Hakol kasher l'kol ba'daika be'etat tefillah. He says the main time this happens is prayer time. Now it'd be interesting to look and see, like, what if a person is generally not davening, and yet if he paid attention to his life, he would notice that at prayer times he would actually notice that he's having confusions and lack of clarity, to keep him from thinking of the truth, of the purpose of why we're here. And that power of this power of Machshavot Zarot come at him specifically to confuse the person at the time he's going to go pray or should go pray. And the aspects of mi malel gevuros Hashem, that hainu mishim malel gevuros Hashem ba'isat tefillah, that who can malel is to speak, who can speak the words, the powers of Hashem, meaning to say who can enunciate the powers of Hashem at the time of prayer. As yashmiya kol hilato, that person that can enunciate and pay attention that this is Hashem's powers that are coming into me, whether the thoughts, whatever it is, that I'm going to continue to pray, His praise, yashmiya to kol hilato, His praise, all His praise shall be heard, it shall be made to be heard, yashmiya. Meaning to say, what he does is he causes himself to hear all these different confusing mixtures of thoughts and all these confusions, and he starts to remember. Because this word tehillah that I just translated as praise is also translated as a mixing up and a confusion. As it says, "Malachav yasim tahala." That's so that his angels shall place a tahala from the word tahala is like a bahul. Also the same root as bahul. Tahala, like levahel, is a similar root, the hey lamed there, to cause a shock or mess up. Alkein srichin his gabrus gadol ma'od ma'od. So it says, with that person who can speak and remember and call to Hashem and gird his loins to be strong in the face of those thoughts. In other words, don't let them get you down. That person, you need an absolute strong encouragement, self-encouragement. You have to encourage yourself. Because those things specifically come up. So anytime you're going to, they have to know this. So we just said earlier that we want to learn how to get used to praying. But you have to know something. As soon as you start praying with any type of real truth and trying to do this, you're going to get hit with it, because those forces that try to oppose this. Prayer stands at the very top of the world. The Gemara says it's the most powerful thing. Rabbi Nachman says it stands above everything. And so therefore, the powers that oppose it, it is so much light. It seems so simple that it's hard for us sometimes to really believe in its power. You mean if I just talk to God, that's the most powerful thing I could do? Well, what about, all these conflicts sitting and learning Gemara? That seems like much more powerful. That breaking my teeth on Gemara, that seems way more powerful than just sitting and talking to God. And a lot of people get caught in that. It's hard to believe.
So you're saying it is a great value to
learning Torah is opposed to everything, so God forbid, I'm not saying. But Rabbi Nachman and everybody says, the Gemara itself says that prayer stands at the pinnacle of the universe, and people denigrate it. They're like, prayer. Right? So now Rabbi Nachman's telling us something else. He's telling us that that when you do try to get it together, like the same thing, the lack of prayer is an aspect of Pagama Bris. Because lack of prayer is a lack of emunah, a lack of relationship with Hashem. That is also an aspect of blemish of the covenant. Okay? So we're talking about fixing that. So we understand that when we start to pray more, that's part of the fixing. And he's saying that as soon as you do that, the forces that have been nourishing from the Pagam that you're now trying to fix are going to come against you harder. And you're going to find yourself with all sorts of crazy thoughts. He says, don't worry about it. Just keep yourself strong. Encourage yourself. Keep praying. Keep trying. Don't give up. And screamed. Apparently he sat there one day when giving a Torah and he just became so enthused in this. He said, and he just screamed out, there's no Yehush, there's no despair in the world at all.
The question is now, when you pray in the Amida, you have the allowance of praying for things that you want for yourself, for your family,
right,
friends, etc. And I thought to myself that if I'm saying the prayers in the Amida and then I'm saying this supplication, then if you turn around and sort of like an hour later, like you said, I want to have a really good day at work or something like that, and you said that in your prayer.
Right.
And then an hour later, you sat down on your own saying, Hashem, I really want a really good, a good day. And sometimes what's gone on in my head saying, well, that's not having emunah because you've already prayed to God and said that you want.
Right, but repeated prayers it's not
good.
Because repeated Hashem loves prayers. Hashem loves our prayers. That's another thing that Rabbi Nachman says. Hashem has no real needs, but He created Himself, as it were, with a tremendous love and addiction for our prayers, right? And so just like an addict craves that thing, is addicted to, Hashem craves our prayers. And so you can always pray. But there's another thing you have to understand. There's several different types of prayer. The Shemona Esrei is one, and the places in Shemona Esrei for personal prayer are certainly there. Okay? What is Shemona Esrei about? Shemona Esrei is about when you go stand before the king. And we have the merit and the gift that we're allowed to stand before the king 3 times a day like that. And more if you want. But if you're standing before the king and you're kind of like a common person, you don't even know exactly what to talk for, what to ask for, and make sure you cover everything. So our tzaddikim came along and said, listen, there's going to be coming a time in the galut that a Jew's not going to know how to talk before the king. So we're going to, and they're not going to be able to receive everything they need for their spiritual sustenance. So we're going to give you this structured thing that you go in before the king every day and say this structured thing. But on top of that, there's having a relationship. Because this relationship that we're talking about is like a servant to the king. And it's a very important relationship. Okay, but we also want to have the relationship of a son to a father. And we also want to have the relationship of lovers to your Shekhinah. Right. That comes in you wouldn't, if you were in an intimate relationship with a woman, you wouldn't just you might do some things formally just because that's like a very nice way of expressing an aspect of the relationship. But you'd also want to be informal and totally yourself with that person. And if you only did it for, it happened, you're walking along and you happen to say something to her, that'd be different than making an appointment to focus on each other for an hour a day. That's hitbodedut. That's what Rabbi Nachman recommends is an equally important, and he seems to indicate maybe even more important type of prayer than Shemona Esrei. Chas v'shalom, far be it for me to say that. But he seems to, from what I heard from Rabbi Peretz, it seems that hitbodedut stands above everything, even structured prayer. However, that doesn't mean to say that you can do hitbodedut instead of structured prayer. However, it might be possible. I think I seem to remember asking this to Peretz. What if you're only going to do one type of prayer a day, and it's hitbodedut or structured prayer? It seems to me he might have said, and I can check with him again because I wouldn't want to say this wrong. It seemed to me he said hitbodedut. That takes precedence over structured prayer. I'm pretty sure I remember that. I got because of the magnitude of what I'm saying. I really should check it out again.
What about hitbodedut with structured prayer?
All the time. But ideally, structured prayer should have your personal prayer in it. But again, we're saying that it's two different types. In structured prayer, you're standing there like a servant, afraid before the king, in awe and fear before the king. Okay, but in hitbodedut, you're in the forest, you're in your own environment, you're dancing, you're talking, you're walking, you're singing, you're calling out, you're screaming. You can't do that so much in a big Knesset unless that big Knesset happens to be full of people who are all doing that.
So you're saying that hitbodedut is possible to do in a group of people, in a group of 10?
Okay, so we've talked about this. We can talk when you make yourself alone with Hashem. You can recognize that really on a certain level of truth, on a certain level of truth, every other person in this room is Hashem's virtual reality that is created just for you to interact and see Hashem. When you've gotten to that awareness, you're in hitbodedut. Okay. There's a certain level of truth that you can say that Hashem's running the world just for you. Okay, it's Pirkei Avot. Right? Hashem created the world just for you. Rabbi Nachman says, and that therefore each person has to see to it to know how to pray for the world and take responsibility for praying for the entire world. Right? So from that, you can derive and say, so if that's the case, what is everybody else? If the world's created just for me, on a certain level of truth, everybody else is a virtual reality that my job that Hashem's running for my sake to see Hashem in each moment and have interactions and to be aware of the greatness and awesomeness of my Creator, creating all these different interactions and experiences. At that level of awareness, you can be with other people and be in hitbodedut. As David Melech said, "Ani tefillah." I am prayer. He had nullified himself so much to that awareness that he became prayer. He said, "I am prayer." Okay, and he says in Torah Tinyana, Liktimran Tinyana, in 122, he talked about now the strange thoughts that come during prayer. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that every different strange thought is a husk spiritual covering and has its own full spiritual entity. Koma Shlema means it's a full structure. It has its full, and a person being a full soul, a Koma Shlema means it has all the different levels of soul and all the different factors of, I can't do the word, the factors of physicality that are needed to survive and all the different levels of awareness. That's a Koma Shlema. So these thoughts are actually malachim. Each strange thought is an angel, and it's a full spiritual structure. That's brought down in the Kabbalistic teachings, and is explained. The Arizal explains how these thoughts and pieces of soul grab into each person, and it's really it's so brilliant. How did Hashem create so the infinite light became physicality, and that we should be able to have all these different experiences like strange thoughts? He created all these amazing different mechanisms to allow that to happen. and I don't know, when I think about this, I can just exult with tremendous, and that's what I want to see. That experience for me, I hope everybody at least has that, and I hope everybody actually has more than that, and I catch up to everybody, because when I have it, it's such a good experience.
Which experience?
The exaltation that comes from when I really think about how awesome this creation is, with all its different details of interactions and things that we take for granted because we're so used to them as people. But if we step back and don't take anything for granted, wow! Like sitting at a table, a cup, any little thing. But but in Torah, everything in Torah is designed as part of this mechanism to allow us to experience free choice, to allow us to experience that this is real. It's just so cool. So when a person stands and prays according to the Seder, like I'm sure he's talking about Shemona Esrei here, and he doesn't pay attention to the strange thoughts, and so when he's going on in his prayer, so what happens when you don't pay attention to them, you actually cause these forces to give up. You eventually, if you keep at it, they won't have them. That's what he's saying. For each one of these fiends that come in, these thoughts, these angels that are also not, they're evil angels. They're trying to distract you from Hashem. So you're cutting one's arm off, you're cutting one's leg off. You really, by every time you ignore them and keep going in your prayer, you're actually destroying these opposing forces. And that's cool. That's like, again, another thing that we should look at in this world is mashalim, is analogies from the world to see there's all these video games that you have this. So you could get a picture of what this is like, and then have fun with your prayer while you're saying these words, and you notice the thoughts come and you ignore them. Imagine that's what you're doing. He says that's what you're doing. It's not, we have to imagine, we have to use our imaginations to be able to enjoy it more. Because it's a really enjoyable thing to pray and imagine and watch the thoughts come in and keep going and know that I'm destroying those thoughts, those evil beings that are trying to stop me.
I often find, in times of sort of like sadness or melancholy, which obviously that's for sure is an unpleasant thing, is that you're getting these thoughts coming on in your head. And you said before that some thoughts you can't stop the thoughts coming there. Do you know what I mean? You can't stop the thoughts. But what happens is after a certain length of time it passes. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying just keep saying the words of the prayer.
Keep saying the words of the prayer.
And keep trying to refocus on what the real truth is and why you're praying. But don't get upset if you didn't. Don't get uptight. Just keep going by not getting uptight. Because when you get uptight, you're actually letting them win. That's when they're winning.
Yeah.
They get into all these thoughts, and they're going, ha, I got you.
Yeah, that's right.
He says, keep going, and you're doing the job. Okay. And this is really the exact same thing in prayer as far as cutting down the enemies. When a person strengthens himself to pray according to the order of prayers, and he doesn't pay any attention to the strange thoughts at all, then he kills them or dismembers them. And also Rabbi Nachman says elsewhere in Torah 72, again, he's reiterating it in a different way there. You don't need to look at them, these strange thoughts at all. You don't have to look it back. Maybe I have to do that again because I wasn't thinking, because I was, sometimes I've had it where I'm in the middle of Shemona Esrei, and all of a sudden I remember last time I remember I was at Hakel HaKadosh, and all of a sudden I'm at Bnei Yerushalayim. How did that happen? You know what I'm saying? Like so the third bracha ends Hakel HaKadosh, right? And then Shema Kolenu or Bnei Yerushalayim is like the next to the last bracha before you go into the last three, right? And so I'm going through and I'm saying the Shemona Esrei, And at first I had great kavanah, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu Melech Me'emi Simchai. I'm crying, and I say Kel Kadosh, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm saying something else. And I know time passed. That it's not an issue that I skip. I know the time passed, but where was I? In strange thought land. So I might think, I'm supposed to start all over. No, he says, don't look back at all. Just ignore that there were strange thoughts and go on. Unless you have strong evidence that you skipped. If you know that time didn't pass. But I'm talking about times where I was definitely saying Shemona Esrei, but just realized that my thoughts went off, and now I'm back to our regularly scheduled program. So just by this, what you said, you just keep going and ignore them, and eventually they stop. And if he doesn't turn away and get distracted by them, as adarabah, then really it's actually the other. It's going to be opposite of what you'd expect. I'm sorry. All right. If he doesn't stop paying attention to them, if he keeps paying attention to them, so I'm going to stop these thoughts. Right? He has that in his mind. He says that's going to cause the opposite of what you want. Just don't think about the thoughts. Just think about the words you're saying. The next word. What's the next word? What's the next word? In order of the words. And he says you keep doing that, they'll stop. So and if he keeps paying attention to them, these thoughts, I got to stop them. They're going to be more thoughts. Just like a person who's running away from something, but he's kind of running away like this. He's running away, and he's kind of like looking over to making sure that he's actually really, the thing's still there, and he's still running, but the thing's still there. That's how it is with these thoughts. You keep paying attention to them. Is that thought still there? Am I still thinking strange thoughts? You're going to keep getting strange thoughts. That's the same exact thing about thoughts as far as this type of this how you pay attention to it and it keeps coming at you. Rabbi Nachman also says that a person has the power to turn his thoughts according to what he wants to turn them to. And like sometimes people are just used to letting their thoughts go. Sometimes people haven't really been working on trying to focus on saying prayer and stay focused. And so I just have to do this, I'm going to do it, I'll get it done with. I'll think whatever thoughts I think, and I'll just get it done with. I know people like that. I'm mystified by people like that. They don't miss davening 3 times a day, and they race through it, and they don't really pay attention to anything they've said.
I think we all see that.
It's an amazing thing. He says even that person who's used to praying that way and used to just letting his thoughts and not paying attention to trying to stop to focus on the words and just like lets his thoughts do whatever they're doing. Nevertheless, a person can still choose to turn his thoughts to the straight path. Because it's impossible for a person to think 2 thoughts at the same time. Therefore, when a person does strengthen himself and pushes his thoughts away, and that's not the same. Pushing your thoughts away is not the same thing as paying attention to the thought and saying, there's thoughts, and getting. You understand the difference? Pushing those thoughts away is not pushing them away. It's by pushing through and saying the next word. That's what I'm. See, if you remember, we said can't take. If I'm thinking about the thoughts, right? That's what I'm thinking about. I'm going to push those thoughts away. No, I'm going to say the next word. Now I'm thinking of the next word. I'm not thinking of the thoughts. And that's the power we have to turn our thought, to choose what we're going to think about next. Okay, is this a good? Are we getting a little bit? This has been pretty intense. Yeah, I told you it was going to be. So let's save the second. We've done about 2/3 of this piece. So let's save the last third perhaps for next week, and I thank you all for being here and participating and learning together. I bless us all that we should go forth and be able to apply these things, to remember and apply that Hashem should, from His compassion, allow us to open our hearts and our minds to getting used to praying to Him and having Him as an intimate part of my every moment life. And Shnizkeh, through that, to reveal His goodness and glory and greatness in each moment, that other people should perceive it, and the world will become the place that we dream of and we look forward to in Revelation. Chanukah Sameach.